morning, and welcome to Morning Movie News, where just like that, 50 Shades of Grey, the franchise, is right back in the thick of things. With the casting, or potential casting, I don't believe her deal is finished yet, but of Kim Basinger as a female lead in the sequel. A pivotal role, not just to Anastasia and Christian's love story, but to Christian's origin in the BDSM world. Now, what's really interesting about this is that I think a lot of people had written 50 Shades of Grey off, or at least had hoped they would be able to write it off as a one-hit wonder, lightning in a bottle. I mean, the movie made almost $600 million worldwide, but the backlash to it was just so incredibly strong, almost as if, because a lot of people liked the movie. I thought it had some merit. I could see why people were enjoying it. And I had a lot of people actually write me on my review that they were really glad that I, took it seriously and, was interested in understanding why it was popular, because nobody else was doing that. And people just almost went about trying to shame anyone who liked 50 Shades of Grey. And I think in large part, they succeeded beyond the movie making almost $600 million. But it was so bad and so embarrassing that a lot of the people associated with the movie did not want to continue with it. Dakota Johnson and Jamie Dornan were really difficult in their renegotiations. Even though they were signed for more movies, they did the old Jennifer Lawrence move with Hunger Games of like, okay, I dare you to sue me for breaking my contract. That'll delay things even longer. And then, of course, Sam Taylor Johnson, the director, did not want to return. Neither did the screenwriter, Kelly Marcel, because they had such a bad situation with E.L. James. And E.L. James was allowed to, perpetrate this, and she got her husband actually to end up being the new screenwriter. So the thing seemed to be becoming less professional instead of more professional. And a lot of people argued it wasn't that professional to begin with. But with the casting of Kim Basinger, that is a major coup. Whoever thought of that? Whatever producer or casting director said, you know what, let's get Kim Basinger of 9.5 Weeks fame, basically the 50 Shades of Grey of its time, to sign on to this movie, might have saved the entire franchise. And I saw someone in a comment section last night say, get Mickey Rourke, make it complete. He was the Christian Grey to Kim Basinger's Anastasia Steele, basically in 9.5 weeks. And that will make the movie seem even more legit. Now, I don't know who he could play. There's a character called Jack Hyde, which is pivotal to the film. He's supposed to be younger, though, more of a contemporary of Christian and Anastasia. I think it would be great maybe if they were willing to age up the character and go with Mickey Rourke. I think he would kill it as Jack Hyde. But they could also get another actor who, here's the thing. I think anyone of the same age group as as Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson isn't going to want to join this franchise because it has such a black eye at this point because of the shaming that a lot of people did, and that a lot of people in the media even did to the film, to the franchise. But Kim Basinger and Mickey Rourke really aren't working. They have nothing to do. But they do bring a lot of credibility because of their association with 9.5 Weeks. So if you were to bring both of them in, you would be not only helping the 50 Shades of Grey franchise, but you'd be helping Kim Basinger and Mickey Rourke. So it's a situation where everybody wins. And suddenly, again, as I said, 50 Shades Darker gets a little bit more Hollywood street cred, so to speak. It's just really a fascinating and brilliant idea. So Kim Basinger is in talks to play Elena Lincoln, a friend of Christian Grey's mother, who is the one who introduces him, as I said, to the world of BDSM, and who Anastasia Steele feels competitive with for Christian Grey's heart in the sequel. So, great role. I don't know if Kim Basinger is up to it. Kim Basinger, I'm afraid, is not a fantastic actress, which has become more apparent later on in her career, I guess. I don't know why. For a couple of movies, she was really good, actually. But then for a lot of them, I'd say now the balance is tipped in the favor of poor performances. So I just don't know what's going to happen. Of course, she had LA Confidential, so if they can get the director, they have like a TV director taking over. I mean, if she can be guided, she could be a real gift to this franchise. But I'm curious, does the casting of Kim Basinger and maybe even like Mickey Rourke maybe make you feel a little bit differently about 50 Shades Darker? I feel if they do a really good job and they really stick to their guns, they might be able to draw people back in with this kind of really maverick casting. So we'll see. It ain't over yet for 50 Shades of Grey. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the second story of the day is about something that's happening over at DC Comics, which I believe were marching orders from their parent company, Warner Brothers. This was a big story. It was broken by Entertainment Weekly, and that's that DC Comics is going to debut a line of Hanna Barbera comics, which are going to be reimagined, so to speak, by some of the top talent working in comics today. And they have some really great images that were released, and we're going to go over them along with the titles, because my belief is that Warner Brothers wouldn't make such a strong push with the comics and then also with the media announcement through Entertainment Weekly if they weren't planning to do something more with these properties, be it a TV show or a movie. And let's not forget that the Flintstones movie and the Scooby Doo movie at first were somewhat successful, or else they wouldn't have made sequels. So there's definitely like like brand recognition here. And I think it could be really interesting if they were to, actually manage to maybe pull this off. And it also presents DC Comics in a different light, that Warner Brothers sees them, almost the way that Disney sees Marvel, as a marketing tool, a way to expand the footprint of a brand or a brand they want to bring back. Marvel, of course, is thick into Star Wars comics right now. They're also producing some Disney comics like Figment. And Archie Comics, not affiliated with either studio, but Archie Comics has recently rebranded its material quite successfully with top-notch comic book talent and given a lot of fire to that franchise again. So I think you're seeing a real renaissance here, just like you are, interestingly, in the movies, of a resurgence of brands, thanks to top comic book talent and, reimagining. And I wonder what the end game is for all these properties, so it's very interesting. And I think that's, I don't like DC Comics being used just as like a promotional tool, but if it gives good stories, then, it becomes, less using them and more just like utilizing all the tools that you have in your toolbox, right, Warner Brothers? All right, so anyway, first up, you can see here, this is the Flintstones. It's going to be written by Mark Russell. I'm not too familiar with him, but that's Amanda Connor's artwork. She is a really hot talent. She's married to Jimmy Palmiotti. They're one of the top teams in comic books, but they're actually most well known these days for Harley Quinn. They're behind the Harley Quinn title, which is quite successful. So here you have the Flintstones. Some people are wondering if they're going to try and reclaim their mantle from The Simpsons and Family Guy. It'll be interesting to see if they can accomplish that. That looks pretty good to me. That looks like something I would definitely pick up, particularly with Amanda Connor's work. But it says just designs by Amanda Connor. That's one of the worst things about the comic book industry, the bait and switch. Great cover, great promotional art, and then the interior artist, does not quite live up to it. They didn't have that problem in Harley Quinn. They have a wonderful interior artist with Amanda Connor doing the covers. So I hope that is the same case with the Flintstones. And then wait till you see this. That's Scooby Doo. I don't know what's going on with Velma. She reminds me actually of the Maria character, who is a little person over in Spider-Man that Dan Slott introduced. So I don't know what's happening there. But the other reimaginings are quite interesting as well. This is going to be called Scooby Doo Apocalypse, with art by Jim Lee, which is pretty spectacular, and then Keith Giffen and Howard Porter writing. Keith Giffen, he does like some, like Ambush Bug. I'm not a big fan of Keith Giffen's work, but personally, but he has a lot of respect in the comic book industry. So this is Scooby Apocalypse. I think Daphne and Fred, they're just more supposed to, I think, reflect today's, like cool kids. But also what's really interesting there, of course, is Shaggy. Shaggy looks super different. He looks like he came right out of Brooklyn or Seattle. And that redesign is, I think, impressively spot on. He looks a lot older, why is he hanging out with all those kids? But I think that Shaggy has always been, indicative of a certain demographic, and I think they did a really good job updating him to what the demographic is today. So quite brilliant. So we'll see if anyone purchases that. I'd be interested down below to know if any of you are interested in buying any of these. Now here, this is fantastic. This is Future Quest. Now this is Darwin Cook's artwork. He's not a main artist on this title, which is a shame. He's perfect for it, and he's doing the art here. This is, again, a great ad by a great artist, but you're not going to see that art in the actual comic. But this is going to be written by Jeff Parker. Jeff Parker's a pretty solid writer, so I get very excited about that. Jeff Parker never quite took off the way I would have hoped that he would have, but maybe this will be his key to success. But this is going to take Johnny Quest, Space Ghost, and a whole bunch of other characters and put them into one title. Now, the thing that's interesting here is that, obviously this is the Venture Brothers borrowed so heavily from these characters, and now they're trying to, take it back. Venture Brothers is on Cartoon Network, which is tied into the whole Warner Brothers thing. I kind of just wish that they would make a Venture Brothers movie. Venture Brothers is absolutely spectacular. It's like you couldn't do a better adult version of Johnny Quest if you tried, so why try if you already have it? So I don't know what the problem is there. I don't know if maybe the Venture Brothers guys aren't into it, but this has a very high bar set for it by the Venture Brothers to see if Future Quest can even possibly compete. But I will pick, what am I going to pick up here? I'm definitely going to pick up all of them except this last one. And that would be Wacky Raceland. I guess because, I cover this stuff and this might be a movie or a TV show, I'll pick it up just once, but this doesn't interest me at all. This is Wacky Raceland, Mark Sexton, Ken Pontac, not really familiar with that talent either. It's clearly, pulling out a Mad Max. I'm not particularly interested in that. It looks a little bit too cartoonish to me, and also I have a big problem with something that sells more cars than characters, right? I mean, I know that cars are obviously a big part of anything that has the title race in it, but I think that they're ill-served not, really spotlighting who will be following, character-wise, protagonist-wise, or even antagonist-wise. Get all the ists in there, but I'm not impressed with that at all. I think that's horrible promotional art. So if I were trying to save a buck, I would definitely cut that title out. So I'm curious, what would you pick up here? And do any of these, if you were a development executive, do any of these spark your interest immediately for perhaps a movie or TV series? All right, so the third story of the day, I want to talk about something pretty sad, and that is that the Ziegfeld Theater finally closed after years of threatening to close. It always managed to kind of hold on at the last minute, kept alive by movie premieres, but in the end it just wasn't enough, and it closed yesterday. Yesterday was the last time they were showing any movies there, and I actually happened to be walking by there last night because I was like, I was looking for the show times to go up, and I didn't see them going up, and I was like, I hope they're not closing. And then I walked by, and there was a huge line, like back in the old days, like a line around the block to get into the theater, and I was like, well, what's happening? And someone said, it's the last time that Star Wars will ever play here, and that was pretty sad right there, right? He's like, I'm here to see Star Wars, and I was like, well, why tonight? It's been playing there for a long time. He's like, it's the last time you can ever see it here, and I just thought that was tragic. So, what's going to happen to the Ziegfeld? Well, what's going to happen to the Ziegfeld is that they're going to turn it into like a Ziegfeld event space. They're going to keep the Ziegfeld name, but it's going to be like 3 stories tall, and it's going to be an event space. First, they're saying still movie premieres, but I guess just the party part of it, because I think they're taking out the screen. And so it's going to be for movie premieres, social events, corporate events, etc. It's just going to be an event space in the city. It has a good location, being in Midtown Manhattan, but I feel I really just don't see that having a long-term plan anyway. I always felt they should have put, I'm glad they're making a multiple-story building. I would have kept the main theater, and I would have put additional theaters above it, just to kind of offset the price of running the big theater. The problem is, at the end of the day, that people just want to see IMAX. IMAX as a brand and as an experience really took over, and the Ziegfeld just couldn't compete, especially with that having tiny little seats, not having reserved seating, not having stadium seating. It just, it wasn't as good a movie-going experience. But at the same time, it's a little sad to see the old movie houses, like this was one of the last ones still left in the city, just go away one by one. And I think the real problem is that nothing of strong quality is replacing them. And I do wonder about the future of moviegoing. I'm hoping that we have a situation, if you go to Los Angeles has a wonderful moviegoing situation. All theaters are reserved seating. They're all stadium seating. The ArcLight and the Alamo Drafthouse, both are wonderful movie-going experiences where they work very hard to provide top-notch, food and beverage, top-notch picture, sound quality, and also keeping everybody really quiet and just having like a really good cinephile-friendly experience. And I do strongly believe that that is the future of moviegoing. They try to say, and AMC is trying to do that too with their, recliners and trying to also upgrade as well. Now those are premium ticket prices they upcharge, but I think it's definitely worth it at the end of the day. Now some people, of course, as we've discussed, have believed the future of moviegoing is like allowing you to text during a movie and stuff like that. I think that's ridiculous. But I do think that these VIP, ultra experiences are the future of moviegoing, but sadly it's taking a really long time to go there. I also wish that in addition to providing these VIP experiences, movie theaters, worked harder to make the theaters a little bit nicer, a little bit, more elegant. I think that, just basically a movie airport is not the way to go, or, bus terminal. So we'll see what happens. I think we're really in a transitional stage, and I'm curious to see where things go. But especially as more and more people watch the mid-range movies at home because the window is shortening between theatrical and digital release. It's just really interesting to see what's going to happen to the industry. But I'm curious, what do you think? Any of you fans of the Ziegfeld? What do you think that it's closed? When was the last time you went to the Ziegfeld? And what do you think is the future of movie going? All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day. Let's get on to the viewer question. This is from BTC regular Nicholas Yanes. And he brings up that in a recent CNN article, Tim Cook said that China's economy is close to going into depression. They are having quite a problem with their stock market. And Tim Cook was talking about the fact that Apple is very worried about China's economic struggles and how it could negatively impact the tech industry. So Nick, very reasonably, said, well, do you think this will impact, what China is doing to the movie industry? I think both in terms of, having, spending money to go and see movies, in China, and also, of course, their investments in the United States movie business, Hollywood. Well, I think the cat's out of the bag in terms of going to see movies in China. I think that it's unlikely, especially when there's actually a depression, people go to the movies more. So I don't really know if that's going to hurt movie going in China, so to speak. As far as investments in the American movie business, Hollywood, I think, there's always been a little bit of a problem with Chinese investments because a lot of times the money never shows up, even though it was promised. But I think you're seeing Chinese companies diversify into the United States, maybe even because of the problems that there's going on in the United States, in China economically. Because if you have holdings in the United States, for instance, Wanda Group, aka Dalian Wanda, they are probably a little bit more secure, despite what happens in China, because of their investments in AMC movie theaters and Legendary. Not just investments, ownership. So that's a source of income for them. That's going to stabilize them because they've diversified their portfolio outside of their country. So, if China has problems, they're still going to have a really good source of revenue from AMC and Legendary. So I think that's very smart. You're going to see really more, business savvy moves like that coming out of China. I think everybody goes through some problems, but I think that China's just, I almost would feel to some degree China's too big to fail. We'll see what happens. I think that you might see some price points go up for Apple, that they can't, China won't be able to produce things as cheaply as they were before. But I think that overall, I don't think we're quite at the doom and gloom scenario yet. But you might see even more companies go into Hollywood because it's maybe perhaps for some more stability in their portfolios. So, short answer to your question, Nick, I think everything will be fine, and I think you're going to continue, especially, look how much money Kung Fu Panda is probably going to make in China this weekend. We're going to keep an eye on that. And I really feel that China is here to stay on the global stage, not just in Hollywood, but in a number of ways. And that's going to be really interesting to watch this, not only what it does to the global economy, and also people's perception of, the Asian demographic. I think that's going to make a lot of progress in being represented. There's been a lot of talk about, the black demographic being represented in popular culture, etc. I think that because of the strength of the Chinese pop culture market, you're going to see a lot of advancements in terms of Asian talent, which is very exciting in front of the camera. So I think that's going to, change. I think, and also, I think it's going to really potentially maybe change the way China is as a country. So, who knows what's going to happen there. I think we're living in a very interesting age in that regard. All right. Thank you so much for your question, Nick. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please write down below thinking today's top 3 stories and Nick's viewer question. Let me know what you'd like to see covered on Monday and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.